the Unified Planning Work Program and Budget Adjustment. One of the things we wanted to define at this point, Charlie, when we get into it deeper, would be the nature of indirect costs, and that's how that relates to our budget adjustment, what we're about to hear from you and or Forrest. Is it
Yeah,
Forrest or you who are gonna?
I'll start off, and Forrest will fix me as we go. Um,
Okay, and
but
maybe you can give Gail a quick feed of what the UPWP acronym stands for.
yeah, that's the Unified Planning Work Program. Oh, and here's Amy coming into the meeting also. Um, and if you look at the big UPWP spreadsheet table thing that goes on for pages and pages, um, you'll note, there's some different color coding there. And apologies, this isn't the final version. So the final version will try to get at least a little bit of a legend on it to make it a little easier to digest. Anything in pink are tasks that are completed, that we feel like we can delete from this year's work program, i.e., we don't have any billing for them. Maybe in the spring we thought the project was going to happen, and something happened along the way, and it's not happening anymore. Um, so for the transportation project, sometimes that means a town, had a change of heart or a change in direction. For other tasks, it may mean that we thought there was going to be a grant coming from one agency or another, and it didn't happen. So anyway, there are pink ones. There are light blue rows. Those are new land use or non-transportation tasks and projects. And then you'll see some cells that are highlighted in yellow. Um, those were often just changes in like the amount of consultant dollars or some other little specific thing that changed. Or sometimes those, particularly the bright yellow ones, are questions that we were having amongst ourselves, like between me and Forrest and Elaney and Taylor. So there's still some of those yellow cells maybe that we're verifying. And then there's green rows that if you go further down, and some green cells that are new MPO funded tasks, or if it's just the dollar amount in one of those tasks, that's usually a a change in the consulting amount of dollars in that task. So, but that's about as much time as I was going to spend on the really large table with all of the tasks, unless someone has any specific questions there. And then Chris, get in more into the big picture budget. Okay. So on the budget, couple of things. Hey, welcome Taylor on your day off. It doesn't look like you're succeeding, but so just kind of starting from the top on the budget, you see in the center, column D is the budget as it was approved back in May. And then in column F is this, updated mid-year budget. And please let me know if you see any, errors in the math. Like I'm noting on lines 11, 12, 13 didn't carry over the dollar change. So we'll try to capture that in the next iteration for the board. And you can see in those rows 10, 11, 12, 13, we have both new tasks from the Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as a couple municipalities. Shelburne, we're going to be helping more as they're working on a land use regulation update. And then a very new thing for us is row 13, that municipal zoning administrator services. And this has been a long conversation with Underhill in particular, who has had a vacancy there for, gosh, I don't know, Taylor, it's been over a year now, I think.
Over a year.
And unable to fill it. And so I think we're going to try a little experiment to see if we can fill a zoning administrator position on our staff that is then shared with Underhill and maybe another town. So kind of a shared service ZA. that maybe does the trick. I don't know.
So,
So
Charlie,
yes, sir.
would that be a new hire?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And important note, it's kind of hard to tell in all this thing, but this would be a completely separate funding. Like we're not subsidizing this. They're not subsidizing us. We're just taking the actual cost of that person and charging it to the towns. Um, and so it's just a straight up, billing that person to the towns type of thing.
with all the indirect costs.
So interestingly, we're not going to include them in our indirect pool because they won't be like in our office very often. They're going to really be working in those town offices or at home. So we're not going to charge indirect rate on them.
Well, I'm just the towns will be picking up the benefit packages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that part of the indirect costs. Yeah, sorry, Chris.
Okay.
And I know eventually you're going to get me to talk about indirect rates.
I walk around the block with this stuff.
Yeah, no, we'll get there. On rows 17 and 18, the Communications Union District. In the springtime, we thought that project or that the CUD might actually end, and so we budgeted zero. Since then, it's not ending. They actually got a $2.1 million grant from the state. And so you see a huge chunk of money, 630,000, that may flow through us this spring. That's just a guess. It could be plus or minus significantly more or less. But anyway, that's new dollars going through our budget. And notable on the transportation side, you see our MPO staffing on line 21 is decreasing by about $93,000. That is largely a function of some different, family and medical leaves, and also Brian is reducing his hours. He's going to be out of state for this spring semester. His wife's doing a sabbatical situation, so he's going to still work but reduce his hours. So we have 3 staff that bill quite a bit to MPO that are reducing their hours, so that's why that's going down. And the consulting dollars in row 25, you see the significant increase of about 81,000 there. I'm just trying to look for notable things. We kind of right size what we think is going through us for brownfields on row 31. So that went from 200 to 100,000 going through us. On row 40, there's a small task for water quality with $3,000. And then there are some new water quality projects in 48, through 51. And those are just a new specific grant projects that we got or the town got that we're helping with. And then there is another new one is line 54. The bond bank got a large grant from DEC to help fire districts, kind of rural water districts. And they've asked the RPCs to kind of help them initially just kind of get a better understanding of the landscape that's going on with those rural water districts. So we'll kind of start off with some assessment, and then we'll see where it goes. That may turn into something. I think the bond bank is hoping that maybe the RPCs might be able to provide some back office support for those fire districts. They're typically kind of running on a shoestring. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know where that will go, but early stages of that. And any questions on any of these things so far, please jump in. I'm not seeing any yet. And then the hazard mitigation grant program, there was about $10,000 that VEM is providing us to try to help towns with hazard mitigation grant applications. we haven't really had a lot of demand in our region compared to other regions, but um, if there, we do have some funding to pay for staff time to assist if there is something. So, and the bottom line on the revenue side, you see our operations revenue is going up about 76,000, and the what we call consultant revenue, it's not all going to consultants. Some of it passes through to other municipalities or other RPCs. But that went up by 630,000. Primarily, that is the CUD money passing on. Passing through us. And you can see our budget then is topping 10 million. Note that that is still probably not very realistic. Based on last year, our budget was like over 9 million in FY24. And if you remember seeing the audit, last month, it was a little over 6 million. So there was kind of a $3 million gap between, and this is kind of us being conservative, like there may be that much consultant money, particularly on the MPO side that moves through us, or the CUD or that urban and community forestry. But so we're kind of overestimating how much money might pass through us. So I just note that is happening, and I doubt that we'll have 10 million pass through us this year. It's probably more likely to be, 7, but we're trying to be, cover our bases there and trying to be conservative in both directions. Any other questions on reserve? I'm sorry, not reserve, revenue side of the budget? Bard, you look like you almost want to ask a question. You don't, not yet. All right. Turning to the second page, the expense side of the budget, you see that 7 million of just direct project costs flowing through us on the expense side. Salaries up by a little, 4%. I need to update that little note there a little bit, but this is there's 2 positions that are proposing to add in here. One is that zoning administrator we talked about already. The second is another person in our business office. I think we've had some conversations over these months, but hopefully you picked up a little bit that our budget has gone from about $4 million in 2020 to now 10. So the business office has been strained. Sorry, I'm forced. Amy, is there a better word that you guys are using?
Probably not a better word, Charlie.
Overwhelmed. So yeah, you pick your adjective.
Let's stick with strained. That's fine.
All right, strained.
Thank you.
So anyway, and we had hired Trudy back at the beginning of the year. I was kind of hopeful that maybe that would be enough capacity, and by the time we got to the end of the year, it's clear that it's not. So we do have obviously a partial year, the last few months of the fiscal year in this budget. Benefits, you see a reduction there, which is pretty unusual. I think for organizations across the state, as we've been hearing about healthcare costs. So this is a place where I'll note that we again try to be conservative in our budgeting at the beginning of the year, and now we have more actuals that we can plug in, and we are self-funding our health insurance, so we're not part of the bigger plans and things. So fortunately, we're in a situation where we're not seeing an increase. We've been actually building up a reserve in that health insurance account there. So I don't know, Force, is there more to add to that?
I think the other thing that happened was we were having difficulty understanding how much the FMLI insurance would cost. And I think we plugged in a number that was probably a little more aggressive back in the spring. So
I don't think we had accurate numbers till the summer.
Yeah, we just didn't have them yet. So I think that's the other explanation.
Yeah, sorry, Bart.
I think when we talk about being self-insured, we should also mention the stop loss or backup insurance for high costs, because otherwise, oh, what happens if somebody needs like a liver transplant or something, right?
I'm not going to ask why you picked that one, um, but but the and probably self-insured is a little too simplistic of a phrase. So it's not like we're doing it all on our own. We do have a third-party administrator. It goes through like Cigna, reviews all the claims. So it's just not part of the the what do they call the venue where all the plans are? I can't remember.
Marketplace.
The marketplace. Thank you. We're just not part of the marketplace. And so it's a little kind of independent thing. And yeah, Bard, to your point, like there's stop loss insurance that backs up. There's like reinsurance happening behind that to make sure that we're not at any significant risk. And so far, we've been in it maybe 4 years now, something like that.
At least 4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah, and so far we're our claims have been not more than what we've been putting in, and so we've been building up some backup reserve there. So yeah, we could dig deeper into that another time if you are interested. The rest of the expense lines, you can see we kept them pretty conservative for at the beginning of the year. We kind of are proposing to keep them that way now. The only thing that has really significantly increased was the internal consultant line, row 103. And that has been primarily HR work, both in helping with just benefits administration. We brought in a consultant, and in organizational development. We did a staff retreat a couple weeks ago with a consultant, and also have a consultant we'll talk more about is helping us with the staff survey process as part of the director evaluation that we'll talk about under my report. So that's those increased costs. And you see this is a slightly negative budget, a few $1,000 from I think from Force, in my view, that's kind of there's some margin of error that's probably within. We've been pretty conservative over the years, and have always had our end result has never been as negative as we've had in our budget. I'll put it that way as the bottom line. I think that's a true statement, Force. Maybe once.
I think that's true. It's a lot of negatives, and but
it doesn't mean we haven't ever had a negative fiscal year. Just if we did, we were more negative in our budget than we ended up being in reality.
Indeed.
So a couple other things down here at the bottom to note. One is there's a capital budgeting box. So there was quite a bit. We did a lot of capital last fiscal year. So this is just kind of documenting that, and it's getting spread across 5 years. We depreciate that, and then we have not insignificant, but not nowhere near as significant in this fiscal year, of about $7,500 we're estimating. So all those costs will get depreciated. We just finished depreciating some stuff that we had done in 2020, so that came off the depreciation line. And so the two other things here. One is note the indirect rate table there on the lower right. Kind of with all of the changes going on, and again, we hope we're being a little conservative on this. We started off at like 81%. We're thinking we're going to ask for a significant increase in indirect rate. Matthew, heads up. I don't know if you got copied on that request. No, you did. Okay.
You was.
And so that does need to get reviewed by VTrans audit staff as part of our indirect rate approval. And then I should take a moment here and just pause to just talk about what the heck the indirect rate is. And so under federal rules, it's one of whatever the CFR is, Consolidated Federal Register or something like that. is it basically allows organizations that are billing the government, particularly the federal government, to make sure that you recover your costs. And so to do that in a way, obviously we operate a lot like a public sector consulting agency. Like every hour that we work gets billed against some grant source, or it can get billed against kind of admin time or indirect time. So like all of this meeting is an indirect cost for us, as is our rent, as our, a lot of the other things that are listed on that expense list above. So all that gets rolled into an indirect rate. We're a fairly small organization, so for better or worse, the rate's fairly significant. But it's just a way to recover our costs as an organization. And questions, Bart?
And maybe describe the formula used to calculate that percentage. Maybe that's a question for Forrest, but
Yeah, it's really so it's our direct billing, so all that direct billing costs, and then it's kind of the divided by those indirect costs. So in order to cover all those indirect costs, including some staff time, but also all those other things that don't get directly billed to an individual grant source. So that's the simplistic math part is, it's if it's $100 of direct billing, it's $93 of indirect billing. So we'd bill $193 for that hour. With the theory of it being 100. So Forrest, do you want to add?
And no, it is true. At the end of the day, it is just a division problem, as you described, Charlie. But there's the direct cost pool, which is really all the salary and benefit costs of all the billable hours, divided by the salary and benefit costs of the non-billable hours, the indirect folks like myself and Amy, for example, and then all the rent, et cetera. So there's a lot of backup, et cetera, that goes into it, but it does end up just being a division problem. And that is the increment that we charge on top of staff time. There's no indirect charges on anything that isn't salary hours, if that makes sense. Like we're not charging a markup on anything else, just billable time.
Yeah, there's no profit or
Right.
extra percentage added in top. Yep.
On products or anything like that. Yeah.
Jackie?
So, I've been trying to wrap my head around this concept for a while, and I seem to remember that there's a range that you can't go too far. You can't have one anomalous year like we're maybe going to have, or you have to be within a certain percentage.
Yeah, Jackie, I think you're remembering before the last few years, because you can kind of see if and we have like the 5 or 6 year history here in that little table. You can see we've been kind of 75 to 80, like pretty consistently. Prior to that, we were having some swings. Like we would go up to 100 and then go down to 70 or 90 to 70, and so we managed to stop that. I mean, I think really a lot of force work, like how do we stop the swinging? Because we were having years where we'd be, we get $100,000 of extra money because our indirect rate was too high, and so we'd have to underbill the next year to compensate. And so I think that may be what you're remember. There isn't a specific, there's no specific guardrails on it. It's really more of a process thing to so that organizations can recover their costs. Consultants, like the consultants that work with VTrans, all have indirect rates, where the VTrans reviews as part of their billing process. And it's a pretty common thing for organizations that are getting federal dollars to have. So, and just to close the loop here, this is really kind of getting driven, an extra person in the business office, less billing of our time on the MPO side in particular. And, we have kind of some rules of thumb that Forrest and I, kind of developed some number of years ago where like if the line staff should be about 90% billable, so they shouldn't be more than 10% in admin. And like Taylor and Elaney are like they should be about 80% billable, and I'm like closer to like 65% billable. And if we're at those ratios, then we have successful financial years. And that's helped us stay. And you can see going back, like we've been, anywhere from 33,000 to 85,000 in the black every year the last 5 years. So
Okay, thanks.
yeah. And you can, and down at the bottom, this is just one more financial note to just let you see where we were at as of December 20th in our accounts. And so, the checking account will definitely get lower than it is right then. But we're able to move some more additional money into the reserve account so that we just got it over 500,000. So we'll try to, see if we can manage through and keep growing the reserve a bit. Note that to cover about 3 months of our operating budget would be about 750. So we're now at about 2 months operating cost coverage. Sorry, that was probably a lot more detail than anybody wanted on certain things and not enough on others, but any questions or things we missed? And noting that there are a few yellow cells still there. So we do like one more sweep before we send this to the budget, or send it to the board, excuse me. So there could be, some little tweaks in here, but I think Forrest and I knocked our heads against this enough before. I don't know, when was that? Was that last week or the week before, Forrest, or both?
It's hard to remember at this point.
Yeah, but and a real credit to Forrest for there's a giant workbook behind this that starts with every salary and benefit and goes to every task and how many hours are getting worked on every task for every person. So it's a pretty large workbook that has to all square up here. Anything else? I think we're at this point, if you're comfortable, make a recommendation to forward this to the board, understanding with any edits to correct issues that Forrest and I find, that would be great.
All right, to be clear, we're going to forward the mid-year UPWP and budget adjustment to the board for approval.
Right.
With our recommendation.
Yep.
All right. Can we
This
get
Chris Isbard, so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Any thoughts, Jeff? No, it's over meeting. All right, let's move on to agenda item 5, Act 250, Section 248 applications. There are none. Is that correct, Taylor? Said shaking his head.
Nothing
Not supposed to be here today, but thank you for checking in.
Hey, Chris, do you mind if we ask Gail if she had any questions on our budget stuff?
Sure.
Just as a new person plugging in here.
I don't. I'm just listening. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure.
Things are going well, yes. So we're just overworked at the moment, I think, in the business office with the amount of funds out there. All right, so let's move on to item 6, draft personnel policy update. Who will handle that?
I guess I'll keep owning here. So this is, you apologies. You just approved this in September, and now we're just getting into a little bit more detail as we're actually working with these benefits that got adopted into the policy in September, and in particular around the family medical leave insurance and how it relates to other benefits and PTO and things like that. So this is really just an excerpt of the personnel policy, right? That's focused on these leaves and paid time off. Probably probably fixing a couple typos, I think, on that first page. The second page was just lining up the tiers and taking out the number of years because it was causing a little bit of confusion of like if somebody was on a different tier and it didn't line up with their years. So that's what that paragraph on, sorry, page 7 of the PDF. And then, so then we get into section 3 there, family medical leave. And I'm gonna keep going here, but please interrupt me because this gets a little dense with the track changes here. So we really, first we were calling it unpaid family leave and said, well, let's just call it family leave, family medical leave section. So, but then this section really talks about compliance with the Family Medical Leave Act, which is, protects an employee's job for up to 12 weeks. And this has probably been around for 30 years or something. I can't remember when this came into life at the federal level. And so, but then we start kind of blending in. So during an FMLA leave, so that's a leave you can take family medical leave insurance, right? So while you're out on leave, you file for insurance to help cover 70% of your pay while you're off. At the bottom there, actually, I think that's just a relocated paragraph of just notice to the business director and executive director, just about the details of what leave you're looking for. When does it start? How long is it going to last? Assuming no questions there. And there was language about, just, if we ran into a weird situation, we might request some certification from your doctor, which has been language that has always been kind of in there around, medical leave issues. Question 1993. Thank you, Forrest.
You were close.
31 years. All right, I was off. No, it's 2025 now. No, 32 years. All right.
Slipping.
Then we kind of okay. So then we have after this 12-week FMLA period, and we realize there's a lot of flexibility here for an employee, right? I mean, they can be 100% on leave, work no hours, but you can also take family and medical leave on an intermittent basis. I need to care for an aging parent every Friday is, my day with the family. And so that kind of thing can happen. And then we were trying to get clear about what happens with your benefits. So during the 12-week period, and we had this in our policy previously, benefits just kind of continue. We're like, it wasn't really worth the trouble to stop and start benefits during that 12 weeks. So with benefits continuing during the 12 weeks. So this is after the 12 weeks, this language now applies. If you're working less than 24, well, no matter what, you're kind of going through COBRA or Viper. COBRA is the federal term and Viper is the state term, but it's the same thing where your employer, has to offer access to the benefits, but the employee pays for it. That's more of a general thing. And what we're proposing here is that we will reimburse the employee when they're under COBRA Viper at the 75% level, which is the at least 24, less than 30 hours. If you scroll down, there's a table here that kind of shows that, while receiving the FMLI benefits. And then if they're working, that one paragraph looks a little funny. And I guess that was dealing with people working less than 24 hours. And then there's that one sentence paragraph. If they're working 24 to 30, they're just getting that consistent 75% per figure 1. So I'm going to pause there because that's one meaty topic that's getting clarified? Okay. So then turning to the insurance, which really picks up on, I guess, page 9 of the PDF. Kind of the insurance plan allows an employee to supplement the insurance with some time off pay. So we're just clarifying that time off or holiday pay. In the as part of the policy, we've allowed employees to kind of flex their holidays too. So if they wanted to roll in a couple holidays as part of this, or holidays are part of that time frame, they could use the holiday pay also to supplement the insurance. That was a quick clarification there. And then the PTO bank is probably the other, aside from that 75% benefit level, the PTO bank was the other section with some just significant clarification. One where just, ask an employee, like, if you know something's coming, try to save your time and as much as you can. But we recognize that some folks, particularly newer employees that don't have as much PTO, right? They get less PTO than folks that have been here longer, may have hardships, or something unanticipated. You didn't know this was coming up, and I get hit by a bus. I may need some extra PTO. So we had this idea of a PTO bank to help supplement, and we just want to try to help employees as much as we can during a hardship situation like that. Question, Bart.
Yeah, and I'll say with full disclosure, I may be encumbered by my experience as a long-term state employee in the sick leave bank there. I noticed the last sentence in a paragraph deleted the 10 days, but there's still a residual sentence that says will deplete or almost deplete.
Yep.
And so I just note that that's a somewhat inexact term. And my memory, last I looked at the state sick leave bank, is you had to get to 0 before the sick leave bank would kick in.
Yeah.
With just one reference point. But I'm a little concerned that the almost all seems pretty inexact and subject to the eye of the beholder, so to speak.
Yeah. And that was, and I guess it is in the hands of the executive director. And so I was kind of trying to have a little bit of flexibility if somebody, we got to a situation where somebody could keep a few days. I didn't want to push that. This is a little different than those sick leave banks, right? Where people are contributing to it. But yeah, you're right. Thanks, Bard, for putting your finger on that. That is a significant change in this paragraph. And as we were trying to look at how to make, initially being generous and trying to make sure an employee had at least 2 weeks of leave, and that really didn't seem workable as we really dug into it. But I didn't want to. We could go a little stricter and drive all the way to 0, and people do earn it as we go. But I was trying to keep just a little bit of flexibility to not worry if they were keeping a few days, because again, hypothetical things like having a baby, like there are probably going to be needs for PTO subsequent, hypothetically, for those of us that have been there, it may not be so hypothetical, but Taylor,
I do think,
and it doesn't go away even after that first few months, Taylor, I heard.
The concern is obviously you're trying to build in that flex.
Yeah.
With the all and nearly all. And Bard's correctly putting his finger on the fact that it isn't going to necessarily be defensible as a flex. That you have to say 0 for precision in order to be able to work that. But I guess you'd have to work with it to figure out how it goes and see what the issues are. We're a small enough organization. We're not 150 people that I think we're going to bump into too many situations where it becomes contentious. But What's your
Yeah.
opinion, Bart? Is the nature of state government such that, that precision is required because you're dealing with thousands of people?
That there certainly are differences, that and the presence of multiple collective bargaining units.
Well, and there too, right? Absolutely.
Where,
I
That's a good
mean,
one, too.
when I say contentious, I mean, okay, we're going to see you
yeah,
in court. All 30 days of the company's PTO time is now mine just because you can't defend, my request. Yeah.
I think collective bargaining in itself tends to compel exactitude, if I can
Mhm.
use that word. Um, so I don't have a really strong feeling about this. I just noted that it looked different, and if people are comfortable with it, I wouldn't stand in the way.
And Charlie, what's the implications if, somebody is in a situation that's dire enough that, it looks like the entire organization's 30-day bank for the year, I assume,
Yeah,
is
I
going to be spent on one employee
I I think
or the bulk of it. Is there limits to that? And
yeah,
again, that's discretionary, obviously.
right. And I think as Forrest and I were trying to go through the scenarios, and now we're getting into like real life scenarios. Marshall's been taking some of the FMLI insurance with his baby that he had this summer. He's actually been using it the last couple months, and Nelson's going to be using it in 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So who knows, somewhere around there. So as we were looking at the specific situations, weren't coming upon anything that would use all 30, but could be more than half, but it would still leave some time for somebody else, which was kind of on my mind, which was at least 2 or 3 people is probably almost a maximum scenario, like because we haven't had much use of FMLA, you know, I don't know, for some, I mean, I think we've gone years where there was no FMLA request at all. So this will, um, and if you remember when we were adopting this, or at least I remember thinking, and I hopefully said it out loud, like, this is, yeah, we're in some new benefit world here. This is going to take a couple of years for us to figure it out. This was an early iteration of trying to figure some stuff out, but I'm sure we're going to come back to it as we get more experience. And yeah, Bard and Chris, to your points of, there will be some other issues that we haven't flagged yet that will come up, and we'll come back to you when those happen. But at the moment, it seems workable to me. And that without it just being one person consuming all of it. And I also think there's also partly that's a credit to the staff of also thinking about that too, and not wanting to be perceived that way. So so anyway, that's pretty much it. And then there, I think we were also trying to make clear when that 12-week FMLA period ends, which is very possible now with this FMLI insurance, because, and sorry, Nelson, this isn't about you, but but just, but someone having a baby, like it could be 6 or 8 weeks of medical leave, and then 12 weeks of family leave after, right? So it could be out, 3, 4, 5 months. That gets past that 12-week period. And so wanted to make sure it was clear, like, okay, that at that point you're on an unpaid personal leave of absence. And that's when the COBRA stuff kicks in, right? You're after the 12 weeks. And so, our policy already had unpaid personal leave as part of it. So we're, Gail, thank you. Feel free to get in touch with any questions. Sorry, you got a lot of admin tonight. And then the table down below, is kind of showing that 75% stuff table. So that was the extent of the personnel policy. And I have not had a chance. Sorry, now I am going to call out Ann Nelson because she and I have not had a chance to really touch base on the details of some of these changes. And Nelson, should we? Is there more that we should discuss, debate, and maybe change, or and bring this back next month, or do you think we've resolved enough of the questions? All the staff did review this like a month ago, and there were a lot of questions and comments at that time that we did our best to address, but there may still be a couple clarifications we need to talk with staff about.
I don't think so, Charlie. I feel like the biggest question is just, yeah, or the biggest question among staff was, the insurance company will pay 70%.
Right.
To what extent will CCRPC support paying the additional 30%? So that kind of PTO bank figuring out who gets to use what amount. And I think there's benefits to leaving it flexible, and also some people who are uncomfortable with that flexibility. So no, that feels like it. And then what happens, after the 12-week period is up with benefits, but that all seems clear.
Yeah, good. All right. Yeah, so so if you folks are good, this could be voted upon tonight, or if you have more issues you want us to work on, we could come back next month. But I would like to get it pinned down pretty soon, just in case I can't remember what we're calling Ann Nelson's baby. There was a funny name, but I guess her friends were calling.
So we're looking for a call on this personnel policy update. Anyone like to move it as is? Anyone would like to offer changes?
I'm good with it. I move it as is.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Andy. Further discussion? All those in favor forwarding it to the board for final approval?
No, you guys are the end of this journey.
We are the final approval. Okay.
That's right.
We go right from the, didn't even go through the board development committee, did it?
No, doesn't do that. No, you guys are in charge of the personnel policy. I'm sorry.
Well, very good. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please speak up. Thank you. There we go.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
We'll move on to item 7, draft board and committee member handbook and code of conduct.
Yeah.
Now, does this one have to go to the, does this go to the board too, or we're going to deal with this ourselves?
Yeah, so I'll do intro, and then Ann Nelson can probably do a review of content more. So this is the first time you're seeing this. We've kind of talked a little bit about it over the months last year, that this was a desire. And at the time we were kind of talking about just like board member code of conduct. And I think as we, and when I say we, I really mean like Emma and Ann Nelson, we're digging into this. They kind of decided, like, let's just take the whole board handbook and documents there that we had. Let's update those. So this is something I think that probably is worth bringing to the board for action ultimately, because it'd be, good to make sure there's buy-in. But there's no rush on this. So I think the question tonight, is this in a place where you're comfortable forwarding it to the board to review? Or do you want us to do some more work on it and bring it back to you in February before the board looks at it? So that's kind of the fork in the road at the end of this conversation.
I think you all saw this last month, didn't you?
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we reviewed this all together last month.
Oh, all right. I had other things on my mind. I apologize. I was like,
no, that's okay. I think that it makes it easier this month. I wish Emma were here because she did some more detailed updates than I did over the past month, but I know that she
and it's right there in our minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Because this is one that really impacts the whole board, I think it might be at the place to send it to the whole board and let them take a look at it.
I agree with you, Andy. But there were some changes made since the last meeting, like just minor tweaks, I think, but I think the whole board should see it.
That's right. I think one of the things was getting a pithier or more to the point on like group expectations. So like those, you got kind of punchier. Sorry, I'm on I think it's on page 18 of the PDF.
Yeah, I tried to improve those, and I know that Emma tried to simplify and clarify some of the board member roles and responsibilities. I think those were like the two major comments that came out of last meeting.
Yeah, I was the one who was like, can we have fewer bullet points? Or
Fewer?
change them? And yeah,
You
well,
tried, Chris.
I did try. Because it went on, I think, in each section. But it'd be nice if it was sort of highlighted where we changed that, but I don't see that reflected.
And the board has not seen this. I mean, they saw an early version of the staff version in the spring, maybe. So this will be new for the board.
So did we reduce any of those? I don't have my other copy in front of me. But the group expectations had 1 through 9 right now, but was that down from 12 or 14 before? And Nelson, do you recall?
I think it was down from 10 or so, but also the language is simplified.
Yeah, these were
Okay.
like longer statements before, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that was done with staff collaboration because this is the same kind of list of group expectations that staff will also use to obviously bring to committees per this document, but also public meetings and even internal CCRPC staff meetings and things like that. So all staff had a say in this list.
So process-wise, what are we going to do? We're going to throw this as is in the attachment before this meeting in this month, or will that go on for February? How do we want to?
It seemed like Andy was suggesting bring it to the board, right?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, is just bring it to the board and let
Put it
folks weigh in.
on this month's board meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And treat it arguably and as a draft. There are still some elements
Yes.
that don't have the graphics, so it's a working
Yes,
draft for their
I
comment.
think that's right. But
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
again, because it's something that, really governs the board itself, that, as part of the drafting process, before it's done, rather than bringing them a final thing to say, look, here's the working draft of it. What do you think as we refine it?
Yeah,
And
so
then they
we'll
might
just-
give us better direction to bring it back to us to finish it and then bring it back. But
Okay.
And so it'll be a discussion item for the January board meeting.
yeah,
Okay.
Perfect.
Will that resolve this agenda item?
That'd be
All right.
great.
Everybody happy with that? Good. All right. Let's do that.
And so the minutes will just kind of say it was a sense of the committee to send it, bring it to the board for discussion. I don't think we need to have formal votes at this point.
And can we get it out sort of in advance as a separate mailing rather than in the packet? I'm afraid, I would want folks to get a little more time to get on top of it.
So yeah, we'll try to separate it from the packet so that
Yeah, if we could do it tomorrow, that would be great. Because we're not going to change anything in it, right?
right.
At the moment. So forewarned is forearmed. You had homework. Here's your homework.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to 2025. All right, let's move to agenda item 8, the legislative breakfast debrief.
Yeah, just I think put this on the agenda just so you get any feedback. Yeah, I'm missing having Emma here for this too, because she's been good at documenting the feedback for the next year. But yeah, I think we'll try to capture a few notes. But yeah, any reactions, thoughts? And Chris, I mentioned to you that I thought Emma might be doing, kind of a survey of the the attendees. And she reminded me that we actually haven't done that the last couple of years. But if the committee thinks it's important, she's more than happy to do that and send out a little survey to get some reactions. But otherwise, we're just word of mouth. So,
Or we could send them swag bags if we're like the Academy Awards. Thank you for coming.
yeah, right.
Keep us in mind while you legislate this year.
Yeah.
It was nice. Was Gail, do we know if Gail was in attendance at our breakfast meeting? I wonder.
I did not see her there. No.
Okay. Yeah.
My guess is, she's just elected. She's new, and it would have been a good idea, but I don't think I saw her there.
Yeah, I don't think she was there. Yeah, I think that was, yeah, we must have came across her radar somehow and she was curious. So
Yeah.
interesting.
So nothing, anybody want to give Charlie any feedback, or if you do hear anything or solicit any, and please drop it back in his lap or Emma's.
Yeah, or did you get any feedback from any of the legislators or municipal folks, or were they just it's
Oh,
now getting to be routine? I don't know.
I think my city manager was smiling. That's always a good sign. So we didn't
Yeah.
drag South Burlington to distress. All right,
Yeah, I did actually. Jesse did follow up because some of her city council members wondered why they didn't get an invitation. So, and I don't know if we made this clear in advance, but we only invited the select board or city council chair
Yeah.
and board member, right? So, like Jackie, probably on your select board, and Bard, you too. Like, you guys got invited, and your select board chair got invited, but other select board members did not get invited. And I guess somebody was, raised it as a concern, I guess, because
that sounds like us. Our city manager were there, and two of the three city councilors were
right.
there. It was almost a damn quorum.
Well,
And the
that's
two
the
city
thing that
councilors were
happens,
there
right?
is my alt. So along with the council chair. So yes, they're getting a little territorial.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I think we don't want to, get into those quorum issues of the local governments, right? Like,
Right.
All right. Well, if you have any comments or feedback, please shoot a note or something, and happy to take that. It seemed
All right.
like it worked better to have fewer topics.
Yes. Yeah.
And I
focus on
liked
those.
how it was housing.
Sorry, I know
It was great. And you're absolutely dead on there. Keep hitting that nail with a hammer.
Yeah.
Maybe people will like the sound. All right, let's move on to item 9, Ann Nelson Stoner's equity and engagement update, which is in your packet. I do have a question for Ann Nelson on that. The acronym for Land Access and Opportunity Board. I'm trying to wrap my head around the new future land use state board that they were hiring everybody for last month or something like that. What is the acronym and name for that presiding board that's going to be, I don't know how many members, I should know, 8 members, 5 members? Oh boy.
5 members. It's
I
the
think we
Yeah.
land
need
use
more
review
names for
board.
decision making,
Yeah. The Land Use Review Board.
which is
Yeah.
different than this one.
Oh,
Yeah. That is
Ah.
a little confusing though, now that I think about them side by side.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the LURB is the going to be the guru of this whole thing, and where and how is the LAOB organized?
The LAOB so it's just 2 full-time staff members, and then they have a board. They're housed under DHCD, I think. No, Taylor?
No, under VHCB,
Sorry, VHCB.
Vermont Housing Conservation Board.
Yeah. And they were charged with, I can pop their website in the chat, but
Okay.
to increase land access throughout Vermont. So they've been working with state agencies. Honestly, I don't have a super clear sense of what exactly they do. But they've been involved in a lot of engagement efforts throughout the state around land access, and we're really interested in the future land use process. And they have a lot of strong partnerships, especially with the environmental justice focused populations in Chittenden County. And so there was some interest in collaborating potentially as we do engagement for that process.
Great. And the AALV youth is translate that one for me.
Yes, that is the Association of Africans Living in Vermont, although they've grown to serve non-African, New American, and immigrant communities as well. So they're in Burlington and they have like a youth program, and the youth have been involved in some engagement for the Winooski Bridge project since the beginning. So we recently kind of went back to them, provided an update, and got some feedback from them on what the Winooski Bridge should look like, or what they think it should look like now that we're in the kind of aesthetic phase of that project.
Great. And the Chittenden County Community Engagement Database, is that something that we now host or house?
Yes. So that I will also pop in the chat. Sarah, who's on the land use side, and I created that database when we started building out an engagement plan to update the ECOS plan. And the goal was, can we just figure out what other community engagement efforts have happened in Chittenden County over the past 4 or 5 years to
Cool.
help inform the regional plan? And so we kind of built out this database, and then we're getting a lot of feedback from folks we shared it with that it was a really helpful resource. So we put a little more time into formalizing it and have been hosting a couple of tutorials with partners so that maybe it can be useful for other people as well.
Wow.
Municipalities included. I'll
Great.
put the
Thank you.
link in the chat. Yeah.
And with the Hunger Council, what would be an example of the impact on food access that regional planning would have, since I can't see the forest for the vegetables? To strain another metaphor.
Sorry, just popping that in the chat. I think I mean, Taylor can jump in too, but it's really upstream decisions that may in the future impact, like where can there be agricultural land versus where we choose to develop housing. Transportation obviously impacts food access a lot. So where do we have access to public transit? What areas are walkable and bikeable, especially to agricultural spaces? What else might impact food access?
And
Housing.
the issue of like food deserts as well.
Yeah.
We're pretty
Yeah,
thankful to not have them now, but that would be one of the issues as
yeah,
well.
and that's certainly something that I think about a lot. As you see. Very good.
Yeah, they were really interested in everyone on that Hunger Council meeting was super interested in regional planning, and they had a question at the end about how to get more involved in local planning and kind of brought up the issue of planning just being a really intimidating field to get involved in as a member of the public. And so we had a good conversation about ways to get involved in local planning decisions through their city or town, and everyone was really engaged. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, my example was 20 years ago trying to do planning in town. We were creating a new commercial space or what have you. And I was like, well, because it bordered residential area, it was like, we need some retail so that you can have kids can go get a quart of milk or something like that. But of course, everybody's so locked into Maple Fields and Jolly and all that you got to have a gas station there, and they're going to make their money on selling you water as opposed to the gas and selling you snack foods. None of which is the healthy stuff for food access. But even despite that best planning, you put it there, but without a gas station, it just get filled up with a workout center or a therapist or something of that sort, in that sense. And so it never works out the way we were painting by numbers, the way we thought it would, because it wasn't profitable or it didn't have the right return per square foot. So, well, thank you. Other folks, I'm sorry to take up time asking for definitions, the acronyms. Very helpful, very cool. I'm going to look at that database.
Yeah, thanks for asking about the acronyms. I should have included the full names.
No, it helps. You just gave us 2 links, which is even cooler. Because if you put the links in the document, unless they were hyperlinked, I don't think I'd be able to navigate quite as easily. Anyone else for Ann Nelson? Well, thank you. Let's look at the draft agenda board meeting, January board meeting agenda review. Now to have item 7 included on it in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's item 7 on the draft board agenda too. So just starting from number 4, in January, we typically have a public forum to get ideas or for the FY26 work program. Then we have the mid-year adjustment action item. It does sound like we'll have one or more little minor tip amendments are coming. Yeah, then we've got the draft handbook, which is on there for action. We'll change that to discussion. Sorry, I'm not sure if I was just getting very optimistic at the time.
And we warned the public forum in November, or
The
have we
public
warned it?
forum, it's not a public hearing, so it didn't have quite the notice, but that did go out, or maybe it goes out right now. It's like a 2-week notice.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep. Good question. And Taylor, I think we still have the updated plan guidelines.
We're going to take that off. Actually, I should have deleted it. It's on the February. It's in the box below for February.
Okay.
That's the municipal plan review guidelines. We'll take that off for January.
Yep. Good. And the bylaws, I think that we will hear back from the attorney. Remember last month we were talking about purpose versus mission vision. We should hear back from the attorney, I think, next week. So if you're comfortable not having seen what he comes up with, and we'll just kind of present it at the board meeting. Other than that, I think the bylaws are probably at a place for at least a discussion at the board level and see if there's any issues before we actually ask them to vote on it. And there is a process with regard to our bylaw, updating our bylaws, where we have to like send it to every municipality, I think for maybe a 30-day review period before we can actually, vote and finalize the bylaws. So it's, it's not a one meeting type of thing. It takes a little longer. But are you comfortable with bringing the bylaws? Yeah. Okay. The equity update and I haven't done anything with this one. The policy priority list. We had been like trying to every 6 months to talk about policy priorities and had a list going. So I was going to update that list and just see if anybody had any other input on it. But it also, I hope it's a little helpful to the board to let you know mostly like what I'm working on in the legislature. If I'm working on anything is, will be on that list. I do think there is going to be some more housing type work, probably more around appeals and infrastructure than actual permitting process, right? So I do think there will be more on the housing conversation. And I think that's about it. Unless anybody has anything else. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Chris, a couple of things that are new here. One, I did want to give board members a chance under my report to, give any feedback on the legislative breakfast, but also give you, Chris, maybe an opportunity to let the full board know that, we're in the process of doing my evaluation. If they have any, comments they want to send you along the way, this is like next month is probably a good time to do that.
Very good.
And then the other thing, Chris, I think it maybe was you that asked for this. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see, we have like the next couple months of board items. But I think it was you that asked for like kind of an annual action calendar. Like what's the annual cycle of things? So we took a first crack at that. And you can see, there's kind of an annual cycle to a lot of things, and a lot of our meetings have an annual piece to them that come up every year. So hopefully is that helpful a bit?
I think it'll be very helpful. At least people love to see a quick thumbnail of what we do, and there it is.
Yeah.
At least on a regular basis. So
yeah.
All they have to do is unpack the UPWP. It's as good as any one of our training sessions with the
Thank you.
board members.
I'll spell that out. That's a good catch.
Well, I mean, explaining the significance of it, and the warning of public hearings is often helpful too, because the public engagement is going to be a key focus.
Yep.
Good. I like it. So
Yeah.
anyone have further thoughts on the January's board meeting on the 15th? In 2 weeks? No? Did we then move on to Chair Executive Director report? I had a great breakfast with Bard and Charlie this morning. That's what I can report. We discussed a lot of these items.
There you go.
And the otherwise, did you give us the bylaws update in
I think
review of what we're going to,
I think we just covered that.
then it's off to the lawyers still.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I, did mention this also earlier. We're, have engaged a consultant to kind of help with the staff survey, both to, give you input on my performance, but also on how we're doing in terms culturally, in terms of walking the talk that we have in our code of conduct, right? So that's new content in our personnel policy. So we're just going to kind of try to get some questions on that survey to kind of check how we're actually walking that talk. Sorry, Jackie.
I was just curious in this sort of that vein, I think, how
Yep.
did the staff retreat go from
Oh yeah.
everyone's perspective? Do you think it was useful, productive?
I'm going to be silent. And
So is
nobody
everyone-
wants to unmute.
I can unmute. I thought it was great. There was a lot of just like team building, getting to know one another, kind of like activities with laughter and some connection. And then we got more into like what are things you love about CCRPC and don't want to change? What are things that you hope to see change over the next 10 years or so? Those kinds of discussions, and then a little more into specifics around like dealing with conflict or differences within the workplace. And then it ended with the development of a list of how many, I don't know, 10 like action items of things we're actually hoping to work on over, some of them might take 2 months, some of them might take 10 years. And assigning a
I never heard the 10-year part, by the way.
okay, that's me. Maybe 3 years. I think that's what you said, Charlie. Optimistic. And assigning a kind of staff lead to at the very least make sure that those conversations continue moving forward. So I think it was great. Taylor, Amy, Forrest, what do you
I
all
thought
think?
it went pretty well. I mean, not too much to add beyond that. And Nelson, I think it was a positive day. People left with a smile on their face, and we had a list of things we were going to work on, which I think was the product. I found out I'm a very much a product oriented person during the course of the retreat. So that was the product at the end of the retreat. Was our list. Does anyone have the list in front of them real quick? Want to share with?
It's on the wall in our conference room, but I'm not there.
If you give me a
Amy,
second, I can pull it up.
Amy, were you going to add something?
I was going to find a list because I also have it. The Jason Lorber Fun annual meeting. I think we should do this annually now. Staff retreat, not annual meeting. Yeah, I agree that it was thought-provoking, and if we are able to accomplish even a quarter of the items that we walked away with assignments, and team leads, which I think will be helpful to keep the momentum going. Because as we just get back into the grind of work, I think it's easy to forget some of the goals that we had, but by assigning team leads and mini subgroups for those, I think there will be some momentum moving forward, which I think is important coming out of something, where you are fully engaged, and also just remembering the reason that we were there. I think it was great.
Yeah, and that's actually part of Jason's contract with us. And we're talking about Jason Lorber, who's got a consulting firm called Plum Consulting. He's actually going to be working with us over the next 6 months, kind of checking in with some of those like staff leads on like, oh, how are things going? Do you have some, you have a little team? So we're going to have like probably little 3-person teams for each one of those. I think we ended up with 9 um, efforts to move forward. So, as Ann Nelson said, some may be very short term, and maybe they could even get done in a week, and some may take longer, but not 10 years because yeah.
I have it pulled up on my screen. Do you want me to share my
Oh yeah,
screen?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for asking about it, Jackie. Yeah, I already moved right beyond.
Well, it seems like it was forever ago already, right?
Yeah, right. It was 4 weeks ago tomorrow. But you can see on the left are the things that the staff kind of came up with wanting to keep, and the right are things to change, and you see the staff person assigned to each of them. And so, some like the top one up there, the cog, like, how do we help our towns more with implementation and stuff? Like that's probably a longer term one. We'll see how that plays out, and that's beyond our ability even to implement, right? But a lot of the things underneath the change, technology or how we do conflict resolution, or what's the 6th one down there? Better furniture, which was like one specific piece of furniture in one specific part of the office, and external recognition, a little update to our evaluation forms, so some things, and I think we'd actually been working on the evaluation forms already, so I think we got like a lot of that already in this iteration. So anyway, yeah, I think it was encouraging and positive, and the tough one is going to be the manageable workloads. There's going to be one tough one. Frankly, technology upgrade is going to be challenging also.
Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I felt the same way these guys did. Like, I think everybody walked out feeling pretty good, and not, I think everybody already felt pretty good, but it was a little reinforcing, and a lot of little relationship building, almost icebreaker things, but like learning little factoids about each other too, but in much more like one-on-one conversations in the morning, which was, we don't spend enough time doing that because I'm like always just cracking the whip. Like, we have too much. Let's get back to work. But
Can I share one fun fact out of the retreat that I still like can't quite believe? But all the land use planners, we had to pick our favorite season. All the land use planners that were all falls. It was very weird. All segmented into falls.
Do you just like those changing colors?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. We talked about season. Yeah, and there was another. Yeah, Taylor made reference to the. There was a little exercise, and I can't remember the 3 parts of the triangle. It was like focus on product, focus on process, and I can't remember the third side, which isn't a good thing.
Product, people.
And people.
Yes.
And people, and it was just kind of interesting. Oh, there you go. But you can see how I think we had. Let's add like 66. So we each got 3 votes of, like, so you could be, more of a people person, so 2 votes on people and 1 on process or something, right? But you can see kind of how balanced the staff was. Like, the numbers underneath are how the staff all voted in aggregate, right? So 25 on process, 20 on people, 21 on product. So that was just interesting. And then, but we all aligned around the triangle on a table. And so you could kind of see some variations of like where the staff was around this exercise also. Sorry, that was more than you asked for, Jackie, but you got the full debrief. Hey, Chris, I don't have anything else, I don't think, unless you have questions for me.
No, I think we covered it. Thank you. Any new business? No executive session?
Not for me.
I'll ask for a move to adjourn then.
So moved.
Thank you, Andy.
This is
Second.
Bart up.
Jackie got you before Bart. I appreciate it. Well, thank you all and happy 2025 to you. If all those in favor, please say aye. Hit the leave button. Anyone opposed, please stick around and tell Ann Nelson why.
Hey, thanks
Aye.
all. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Sure.
In 2
Take care.
weeks.
Everyone.
All right.
See you. Bye-bye.